Welcome to the Virtual Sangha podcast from virtualsangha.org. Looking to learn more about Buddhism and connect with friends on the path? Or maybe you're an experienced practitioner and you enjoy keeping a beginner's mind. Wherever you're at in your journey, you're invited to visit virtualsangha.org to browse our resources there and connect with our supportive and inclusive community on Discord. Find the link in the show notes for more information. And now, on with the show.
I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, and I take refuge in the Sangha. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammāṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be apart from the sublime bliss that is free from suffering. May they remain in a state of equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. So, thank you everybody for joining me today. We are going to be continuing our book club from Great Disciples of the Buddha. This week's reading was about Mahamoggallana, which we heard a whole bunch about him in Sariputta's chapter, but he does have his own aspects of this, which I didn't write down the author's name of the section, but they focused on more than Sariputta did. So we start off with the youth section, growing up, which none of this should be too, out of the ordinary. Much of this, so I won't rehash what we've already heard. But for those of us who weren't present the last readings, I'll give a few details. So, Mahamoggallana was not, of course, born Mahamoggallana. He was born Kolita in the town of Kolita near Rajagaha in Magadha. His parents named him after the town he was born in, and he was born to a Brahmin family. At the same time, the one who had come to be known as Sariputta, who was named Upatissa originally, was born to another Brahmin family nearby, and the two were inseparable from birth. They had different temperaments. The text gives examples that brief description of this difference, but I think it's enough to say that they were different. But this didn't ever really bring them into conflict, and they remained good friends till the end of their lives, the end of their worldly existence here in this final form. Like in Sariputta's chapter, we hear about the festival in Rajagaha, which has so many plays, the dancing, the music, all sorts of great stuff, and Kolita and Upatissa are going to this festival, and they're watching it, and they feel like something's wrong. And now this time, I forget exactly what was said about in Sariputta's chapter, but at least in Mahamoggallana's, it says that he was up late at night. He was wondering, what's the point of all this? This just seems like nonsense, right? We're just going through these motions. We're just making all this noise. What does it really matter? So in the morning, he talks with Upatissa, and they're in agreement. They had the same idea. This just seems like nonsense. This worldly life, these worldly things, they seem like nonsense. And so together they decide to give up their Brahmin threads and don the saffron robes and go into the life of wandering ascetics. Bringing us to the wandering and spiritual search section. They come to study under the teacher Sanjaya, who we heard about in Sariputta's chapter, of course. However, this time we do get some details about who Sanjaya was. I don't remember us getting much in the way of understanding of what Sanjaya actually taught. Now, unfortunately, his doctrine isn't well espoused in the text, but we do have at least a little understanding. So as far as I can tell, Sanjaya was defined by his skeptical agnosticism, right? So he Many spiritual teachers of the time were willing to give dogmatic claims about the nature of reality, whereas Sanjaya, and there's actually an example of him speaking with a king, who just gives sort of, I don't really hold any firm beliefs. I think it's unwise to make such claims, which is very interesting. Unfortunately, for our two main characters here, the ones who become Sariputta and Mahamoggallana, they didn't feel that this was enough for them, and they asked him, "Says is this your whole teaching?" Because of course, like the Buddha, they quickly, well, like Siddhartha Gautama, quickly excelled through all the teachings Sanjaya had to give. And they asked him, "Is this all there is? Is there anything else you can teach us?" And Sanjaya answers, "Yes, this is all there is. You have accomplished everything." And this was not enough for them. They wanted the end to birth and death. That was their aspiration, and Sanjaya was not offering that. So they leave Sanjaya and wander to look for more teachers. It's interesting. I don't remember the Sariputta section mentioning the extra wandering. Maybe it's because I don't remember. But anyway, during this wandering, because this was around the same time that Siddhartha Gautama, was in the world, and I don't know if he was studying it at this time, but it is conceivable that they also, the ones who become Sariputta and Mahamoggallana, they ran into Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramputa, who we know from the Buddha's life story. So they search, they attend all these different masters, but again, they don't find this, what they're looking for. The masters of their day, they teach either meditative absorption or the understanding of ultimate reality, and they find that no teacher can really give them what they want. This continues for some time, and I found it very interesting to note that they were around 40 when they actually encountered the Dhamma of the Buddha, which I think is important to note, because I think a lot of us can feel that we aren't we're not progressing quickly enough along the path, or we're not making genuine progress, or we're now too old to get anywhere in the teaching. But here we have these two great disciples, people who have been with the Buddha for eons, and they didn't really hear the genuine teaching of Siddhartha Gautama Shakyamuni Buddha until they were around 40. Just nice to know. So anyway, we get to the section finding the Dhamma, and this is that famous tale where Upatissa, who would become Sariputta, meets Asaji, and Asaji gives him this stanza, this famous stanza: "Of those things that arise from a cause, the Tathagata has told its cause, and also what their cessation is. This is the doctrine of the great recluse." And just from this stanza, Upatissa gets what the text calls a stainless vision of the Dhamma. And this was enough to, make him want to go check it out. So he goes and he finds Kolita, and Kolita, being our main character for this section, says, "Wow, you look like something really good just happened. Your face is shining. You look like you're a whole new person." And Upatissa says, "I have found the deathless, the one who has gone beyond birth and death." And Upatissa recites that stanza again to Kolita, and he's like, let's do it. Let's go figure it out." So they resolve to go see the Buddha, who is at Bamboo Grove Monastery at the time. Before they go, they try to get Sanjaya to come with them. This is again from Sariputta's chapter, or last chapter. And as we know, Sanjaya refuses. He says, "I can't go back to being a pupil, right? I've got all these students. I've got all this stuff. You want me to go worship at somebody's feet? No, I'm not doing that." So they leave, and the text says that Sanjaya vomits hot blood, as you do when you refuse the teaching of the Buddha. Take some of my coffee here. So our guys go to see the Buddha, and upon seeing them, they see him when he's giving a Dhamma talk. He says, "These two, they're going to be my new chief disciples." And of course, this causes some consternation, but this is because these three have been together for so long. As you remember, Sariputta and Mahamoggallana, they made aspirations to be part of the Buddha's dispensation, a future Buddha's dispensation. And now this is coming to fruition. After their ordination, they are finally given the names, or finally called by the names, Sariputta and Mahamoggallana, to And Mahamoggallana, it says, is given that name, Moggallana the Great, to distinguish him from the others of the same Brahmanic clan, Ganaka Moggallana and Gopaka Moggallana. Let's see. So after their ordination, Sariputta remains close to Rajagaha, and he goes to meditate in a cave called the Boar's Den, and he stays there in meditation for 14 days before he gains arhatship. Of course, our chapter is about Mahamoggallana, so we get a little bit more detail about him. So Moggallana, he goes into a forest. As you remember from the last chapter, he was given a title for this, the Great One of the Forest, whatever it was. And he starts to practice what the Buddha taught. However, it seems that he has a lot of difficulty. He routinely needs personal instruction. And I thought it prudent, so that this first obstacle that we hear about is his chronic fatigue. And I noted it in our book club channel, but I wanted to read it out because I thought this was a very good teaching for us to ponder. And when we practice the Dhamma, when we actually go about our meditation or our chanting or whatever we choose to do, oftentimes we have one of two things happen. Either we get really tired or we can't focus. Well, this solves one of those problems. this first teaching here. So the Blessed One comes to Moggallana, sees him, he's nodding off, and he says, "Are you nodding, Moggallana? Are you nodding?" And Moggallana answers, "Yes, Lord." So the Buddha tells him, "Well then, Moggallana, at whatever thought drowsiness descends upon you, you should not give attention to that thought or dwell upon it. Then by doing so, it is possible that your drowsiness will vanish. But if by doing so, drowsiness does not vanish, then you should reflect upon the teaching as you have heard it and learned it. You should ponder over it and examine it closely in your mind. Then by doing so, it is possible that your drowsiness will vanish. But if by doing so drowsiness does not vanish, then you should repeat in detail the full teaching as you have heard it and learned it. You should pull both earlobes and rub your limbs with your hands. You should get up from your seat, and after washing your eyes with water, you should look around in all directions and upwards to the stars and the constellations. You should give attention to the perception of light, to the perception of day, as by day so by night, as by night so by day." There's a very interesting I'll get to that later anyway. That specific phrase, this internal light, actually has like its own definition. It's really interesting. It tugged on me a bit. Where was I? Yes. With your mind clear and unclouded, you should cultivate a mind that is full of brightness. With your senses turned inward and your mind not straying outward, you should walk up and down, being aware of going to and fro. Then, by doing so, it is possible that your drowsiness will vanish. But if by doing so, drowsiness does not vanish, you may, mindfully and clearly aware, lie down lion-like on your right side, placing foot on foot, keeping in mind the thought of rising. And on awakening, you should quickly get up, thinking, "I must not indulge in the comfort of resting and reclining in the pleasure of sleep." Thus, Moggallana, should you train yourself. And he, of course, gives that example of the lion pose. So that light thing that I mentioned earlier, at the risk of butchering it, the text does give us the proper names. It is the perception of light, alokasana, is mentioned in the text as one of 4 ways of developing samadhi and as leading to knowledge and vision, naradasana. So that was the text. Let me go back to my notes. Oh, yes, the Buddha also gives another teaching. Things that should not be done because they lead to recklessness. I will also read this out loud because it is the words of the Buddha. We should probably hear them. "Further, Moggallana, you should train yourself in this way. You should think, when calling at families on the alms round, I should not be given to pride. Thus you should train yourself. For in families it may happen that people are busy with work and may not notice that a monk has come. Then a monk, if given to pride, may think, who, I wonder, has estranged me from this family? These people seem to be displeased with me. Thus, by not receiving an offering from them, he is perturbed. Being perturbed, he becomes excited. Being excited, he loses self-control. And if he is uncontrolled, his mind will be far from finding concentration. Further, Moggallana, you should train yourself in this way. I shall not speak contentious talk. Thus you should train yourself. If there is contentious talk, there is sure to be much wordiness. With much wordiness, there will be excitement. One who is excited will lose self-control, and if he is uncontrolled, his mind will be far from finding concentration. Now let me find my notes where we were. Yes, they're the instructions, how to be mindful, not prideful. This is the Buddha essentially teaching Moggallana, you need to be mindful in all that you do, right? If you aren't mindful when you're going alms round, you will be given to negative emotions and it won't be good. You should receive everything that you get gratefully. And if they can't give it to you, that's how it is. People got to work. They're not always around to give food to the wandering monk. If they're there, obviously, they should be doing that. But if they're not there, what can you do about that? In the same way, contentious talk leads us to aggravation. It's bad, destroys our mindfulness, and prevents us from following on the path. So we hear about these struggles, and it's clear that Mahamoggallana's path is a little, rough, requiring lots of direct instruction to attain all the attainments. In the end, he attains arhantship in a week, unlike Sariputta's 2 weeks, which is interesting to note. We may think that that's because the Buddha directly taught him so often. Then we get to our last section here, which is the most excellent pair of disciples, which we've heard a lot of this again from Sariputta's chapter before. We get a few comparisons. The Buddha and Nana were both Katiyas, whereas Sariputta and Moggallana were both Brahmins. Sariputta and Moggallana nearly always well together. And as I mentioned earlier, there were the grumblings about it's interesting they leave the grumblings about them being the two chief disciples until this section, when it in Sariputta's chapter it happened on their ordination. So either it happened somewhere in between, or when it happened isn't entirely relevant, but it's clear that people weren't exactly happy that Sariputta and Mahamoggallana were appointed as chief disciples. People give the first 5 disciples, Yasa or the 3 Kasapas, as better options in their mind. But of course, again, the Buddha indicates to them that these two have made aspirations to be chief disciples of the Buddha, and now that aspiration has been fulfilled due to their merit and good deeds in previous lives. We again go through the differences in the teaching style. Well, not teaching style, but the general mode of teaching for Sariputta and Mahamoggallana. We hear that Sariputta gets people at a stream entry and then ushers them along for Mahamoggallana to get them to arhantship. We hear numerous examples about the Buddha holding them up as the best of the best. If you want to be, if you want to have attainments, if you want to follow the path, you should behave like these two. I believe there was another section in which he says specifically that, yes, in many ways the Buddha had spoken in praise of this noble pair of disciples. If a devout lay woman should admonish her only son, whom she dearly loves, she would rightly do so by saying, "My dear son, you should be like Chitta, the householder, or Hataka or Alavi, because these two are models and exemplars for my lay devotees." And she should further say, "But if, my dear, you go forth from home into homelessness, the homeless life of a monk, you should be like Sariputta and Moggallana, because they are models and exemplars for my bhikkhu disciples. O monks, seek and cultivate the company of Sariputta and Moggallana. They are wise and are helpful to their fellows in holy life. Sariputta is like a mother, Moggallana is like a nurse. Sariputta trains the monks for the fruit of stream entry, and Moggallana for the stream, the supreme goal." So, like I said, we get a lot of the same information, but in this section, we hear, of course, more about Moggallana's half of this story. It is difficult, I think, to tell this story without talking about both of them, because the text emphasizes over and over again that these two were inseparable. It was rare to find them apart, unless, outside of specific circumstances, like when they were attaining arhantship, where Sariputta is in Boar's Cave and Moggallana is in the forest. I should know the name of the forest, but I don't. Anyway. Let me check over this through. Yes, and to emphasize the point of the Buddha trusting these two utterly, we again get the examples of pronouncing the banishment on the so-called group of 6 monks who were not, properly representing the Sangha. The story of them converting back those people who, those monks who left with Devadatta, who Devadatta assumed, they've come to see me because I'm the best. But what ends up happening, of course, Devadatta is out-argued. What else do I have in my notes here? Getting to the end of the chapter here, and there's kind of an odd cutoff. Let's see. Yes. Oh yeah, here we go. More praise from the Buddha about our 2 dudes here. Just as a mountain made of solid rock stands firm and unshakable, even so, when delusion is destroyed, a bhikkhu like a mountain is not perturbed. He gives this example, this udana, this inspired utterance about Sariputta. And this may be in reference, if I'm saying it right, maybe in reference to that story where Sariputta gets smacked in the back of the head by a demon and he doesn't even notice. It's like, I got a headache. And Moggallana's like, bro, you just got smacked. Anyway, The next deal about Moggallana, the Buddha says, with mindfulness of the body established, controlled over contact sixfold base, a bhikkhu who is always concentrated can know nibbana for himself. And then we get to the end of our reading for this week, and next week we will get into Mahamoggallana's psychic powers, which were mentioned a few times in our previous chapter. So I hope everybody has gained something from this reading. Personally, I find it very interesting to read about these stories because the most I've heard of the Buddha's life are snippets, right? And of course, Old Path, White Clouds, I'm sure a lot of us have read. Whereas we're now going deep into the different disciples and getting into specifically why they were important. In this case, as it routinely says, Mahamoggallana and Sariputta, they're a pair. They exist in tandem with one another. They're the two chief disciples. The Sangha exists because of these two, essentially. So I thank you for listening to my notes about the topic. If anybody else would like to share anything, please do so now. Or if you want to put it in the study chanting text chat, I will read it out for you. Otherwise, I will sit here for a few mindful breaths and then close us out. Thank you very much. Anybody else like share? I'll hold off here for a second. I see we have a friend typing. I don't want to cut out before we hear what they have to say. Seems like Sariputta as a guide to stream entry is well suited, considering he is more analytical. Very good point. Yes. Whereas Moggallana is able to build off of that foundation through guiding experience. Yes, very good point. As we heard in the chapter, Moggallana needed a lot of personal instruction from the Buddha. It wasn't always direct, those instructions. But it was clear the Buddha was intimately involved with the entire process of Moggallana attaining arhatship. And I guess it's for me, it's a way of demonstrating that we're all going to get there at some point if we want to get there. However, some of us may require more or less help. Some of us may want to do it alone. Some of us may want to have a partner, someone to shepherd us along. There's 84,000 ways to the Dharma. We're all going to get there. So there's nobody else. I'll ring this bell here and close us out.
Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness, gives rise to benefits without limit. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path.